Hey, I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to make a face cast on yourself out of plaster. I've noticed that there are a fair few tutorials out there on how to make face casts when you've got a friend there to help you, but not a huge amount out there on how to make face casts on yourself by yourself. So this is me taking a lot of tutorials that I've looked at online, both from YouTube and from other sites, and just mixing and matching to create a method that works best for me. I'm not an expert, so if you don't feel comfortable with the way that I'm doing something, or you don't feel it works best for you, by all means don't do it that way. Find your own way, find a way that works best for you. I'm not an expert. Again, I've had no formal training in any of this. I am learning as I go. So if you have any questions for me on how I'm doing something or why I'm doing anything, I'll do my best to answer them. And if I can't, I'll do my best to show you to someone or somewhere that you can find your answers better than I can give. As I said, this is the way that I'm doing it, this is the way that I found works best for me. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work best for you. You need to find what works best for you. So take what you want from this and make it your own. Find the way that is most comfortable for you, because you are working on your own and you're putting material on your face, which obviously can be a bit uncomfortable. Now on that note, I'm working with plaster gauze. Plaster does heat up as it sets, so you do need to be a bit careful with material. And if you've never worked with it before, I recommend doing a bit of a test patch. Take a single strip or two of plaster gauze, just experiment with it on the back of your hand or on your wrist or somewhere on your arm, where you can monitor it and make sure that nothing's going wrong and that you're not having adverse reactions to the plaster. And also so you can get a feel for how it heats and warms when you're using it. Because what you don't want is to put it all over your face and then realise that you're going to have a bad reaction to it, because obviously it's your face. Your hand, your face. It's best to do the experiment if you're not sure. And if at any point, even if it's fine on your hand, at any point it feels uncomfortable when you put it on your face, take it off. It's not worth injuring yourself or having any bad reactions to the plaster for the sake of a face cast. There are other materials and there are other methods that you can use. They may require a friend, but it's better than you risking injuring yourself by using a material that could cause you harm. So on the thing of materials, I've got a few things that I'm using that I've noticed other people use. So the first one, big one, is petroleum jelly. You want to use this, it's basically Vaseline is another name, something like that, just as a release agent. So you'll be covering your eyebrows, covering your eyelashes, and putting a thin layer all over your face, just to help the mould release, help the cast release from your face without pulling out your eyebrows or your eyelashes. I'm also using a poor man's bald cap, which is essentially a plastic bag that I've put a bit of duct tape around just to keep my hair out the way. It means I don't have to put Vaseline all in my hair, and I don't have to worry about getting it caught in the plaster. I am using this Modrock plaster gauze. It's literally a big long strip of bandage, plaster bandage, that I then cut into strips. I had two widths. One was about 1/2 inch and the other width was about 2 inches. And that just helped give me a bit more flexibility for putting it on my face and getting sort of around all the detail areas. You also want to get a bowl of water. You don't want to be working over your sink, because if the plaster gets down the drain, it can actually block up the drain, which obviously isn't very good for you and your plumbing. So it's best to work over a bowl. Just put down some newspaper or some plastic sheet, work on top of that, because plaster is quite messy. You do want to make sure as well that you wear clothes that you don't mind getting dirty, because plaster is about as stubborn as acrylic paint when it comes to getting it out of your clothes. It does come out, but it is quite a bit of work. So make sure you wear clothes that you don't mind getting a bit plastery. Is that even a word? It is a word now. And then, what else do you want to use? That's basically it in terms of materials. Again, if there's something that you feel works better for you or that you'd rather do instead, by all means do it. I am going to switch over to the video of me putting all of this stuff on my face, and I will be doing a voiceover for you because obviously I can't speak when there's plaster all over my mouth, so Enjoy, and I hope you find this useful.
Okay, so starting off with the poor man's bald cap, tuck the handles inside of the plastic bag that you're using to keep them out of the way, and to make sure you don't have any potential gaps for the plaster to sneak through. If you have longer hair, I'd recommend tying it back at this point if you haven't already done so, to keep the ends out of the way and out of the plaster splash zone that will be your shirt and shoulders. Place the bag onto your head and line it up with your hairline as far back on your forehead as possible to reduce how much your face shape is changed and altered by the bulk of the bag and duct tape that make up the bald cap, as it can make a difference. Covering your ears is also a good idea for your first cast, as you don't have to worry about jewellery shaping around the ear, getting it caught, or having to clean out plaster from your ears, which has a tendency to really get in there, I found. Start placing the duct tape down, starting at the centre of your forehead to hold the rest of the cap in place. I'd recommend doing it in a few smaller pieces instead of how I've done it, to avoid the little bumps you can see forming where the tape doesn't quite sit flat against my skin. Work down the sides, making sure to tuck your hair back as you go. I found you can get a smoother finish by placing the duct tape onto your skin first, before attaching it to the bald cap. I went down to below my jaw, just to be sure I'd covered all of my hair, and to give myself a bit more flexibility on how far back I could work the cast if I wanted to. Avoid your eyebrows as best as you can with the duct tape, so you don't go losing them before you even have a chance to protect them. You can put the Vaseline down first if you want to, but I found that makes things a bit trickier to stick down the bald cap, as you may accidentally apply the petroleum jelly too far back, which would make it very hard for the duct tape to stick. And you want a good seal. The only downside of doing this DIY alone is that no one gets to see how incredible you look. Once you're satisfied with the bald cap and made sure that there are no gaps or breaks in the seal, and that it's all fully stuck down and smoothed against your skin, get ready to apply the Vaseline. Don't be shy with this. Make sure you really cake it on over your eyebrows and eyelashes unless you want them gone. And if that is the case, there are cleaner and easier ways to wax them compared to making a plaster cast of your face. When blocking your eyebrows, work both in the direction of the hair and against the direction the hair lays. This ensures that all of the hairs are completely covered and therefore safe from the plaster. Again, do the same with your eyelashes, working both inner to outer and outer to inner, just to make sure that they're all fully covered. And at this point, I did forget this step, but I do definitely recommend covering the rest of your face in a thin layer of Vaseline to act as a release agent against the plaster. It isn't the end of the world if you don't, but it does make it a little bit harder to remove the cast once it's set if you forget. Zooming in. And now we are ready to move on to the plaster. I'm working with the 2 strip widths, so I'm starting with the thinner ones. Soaking each strip in the bowl of water that I have placed in front of me, as and when I need it, not in advance, as the water is what activates the plaster, and if you had done this too soon, the plaster would have set before you have a chance to work it. It's important to start with your nose for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's how you're going to breathe for this cast, so you want to have the most flexibility to work it around and ensure you're comfortable with the airflow before covering the rest of your face. And secondly, it's the most vulnerable point of the cast, as it sticks out the most compared to the rest of the face, so you want to give it the most time to set and strengthen before removing the cast. Lay a strip over the bridge of your nose and smooth over the plaster to create a finer finish. This will mean less work for you in the final cast, as it will have a smoother and neater inner finish, which will translate well into the cast. Work around the nose, laying a strip under it before covering the tip and working your breathing holes. Don't go sticking your fingers up your nose and you'll already have plaster on them, as I didn't stick my fingers up my nose, but be sure to work the plaster out of the way of your nostrils to ensure you have ample space to breathe, and also to ensure that the shape of your nostrils are not deformed by the plaster in any way. Once you're satisfied with this, take a thin strip and fold it in half lengthways. Lay it up the length of your nose to create a sort of spine along the entire form. This strip also connects the upper lip and the forehead to the nose, so it creates a more solid base for you to work out from for the rest of the cast. You can skip this step and just work outwards in general strips, but I find that this creates a bit of a backbone for you to work up from. Once you're satisfied with the placement of the spine, get another thin strip and place it under the nose again, fixing the base of the spine into place, ensuring that it's not going to go anywhere. After this, you want to create another thin strip on the forehead, again to hold the spine in place. Once this is ready, you want to create an X shape going across the bridge in the centre of your face. Connect each cheek to the opposite side of the forehead and smooth everything into place. This creates additional support for the rest of the structure, especially around the forehead area. Again, be sure to smooth in all of the cracks and crevices of your face, especially around the eyes, as these detail points are very important to get right and get mapped into the plaster as soon as possible, so you have them there, guaranteed to work with in the cast that comes out. Once the forehead and the X is ready, start working out from the nose. I moved on to my cheeks, again making sure that the crevice around the nose is still fully formed and hasn't been warped by the additional plaster that I've been putting down around it, before moving down and placing the single sheet over my mouth, smoothing it neatly into the crevices and ensuring that every last little detail around my mouth has been formed to the plaster and had the plaster smoothed neatly and entirely into it. Once you move on to your mouth, you want to be sure to keep as neutral a facial expression as possible. In doing so, you create a cast that is most accurate to your resting face, and is therefore the easiest to work off of to create prosthetics and other such designs. Next, you want to move on to your chin, covering it entirely before you move on to your forehead. Basically, at this point, you want to be sure to cover all the most prominent areas of your face, as these are also the most likely to be indented or damaged in the cast if they are not strong enough. As the weakest point in your casts, you want to give them the most time to set and solidify before you need to remove the cast. Once the main areas have been covered, move on to filling in the gaps, or the rest of your face. I went to the cheeks before moving into the side of the faces and around the eyes, before I started placing down a second layer of plaster on some areas. I worked a minimum of 2 layers over the entire cast, but don't be shy about putting down a third, or even fourth, or even more layers in place to be extra sure the mould will hold up when it comes to making the cast. You could never put too many layers down. I then started to pull the mask back, deciding how deep I wanted the cast to be, as I wanted to make sure as much of my actual face was included in the cast. I tried my best to keep the mask even to reduce the work I'd have to do on the final cast. You can get an idea of how messy this is from my hands, so don't say I didn't warn you, you will make a mess doing this DIY. As the cast begins to set, you can start to feel around the edges to see if it's even or not, adding strips of plaster as needed to even it out. It's really easy to feel where the plaster ends by feeling around the edges, especially as it sets up a bit, so just go with whatever you feel is right for you. At this point, you do have the option to stop, you can wait for the whole cast to fully set and remove it. The only issue with this is you will then have to fill in the eyes and the nose once the cast is off. At this point I made the decision to mould the eyes with the cast still on my face so I could get the most accurate cast that I could. Again, this is entirely optional to you, so do whatever you might feel most comfortable with. Shutting one eye, I folded over a 2-inch strip before placing it down and then working in a few more strips on top to hold it all in place. You really want to make sure that you work the plaster into all the crevices around your eye to ensure that the form is as accurate as possible. Also, be sure to keep your eye shut at this point, as plaster in your eye can sting a lot. Just be careful and keep yourself relaxed, and you don't have to worry about a thing. Again, while the plaster is still soft, just work it into every gap. Add additional layers to ensure that it's strong enough and will hold up, as it's already coming in a bit later in the cast, so things around it may have started to set a little bit. By working this in more, you are guaranteed that it will form much more comfortably to the shape of your eye. Keep gently pressing around and ensuring that the plaster around your eye isn't being lifted off by the additional layers that you're putting on. Just gently trace your fingers around the sort of bulge of your eye in all the creases, and you'll see the form starting to take shape. Again, at this point you can stop with one eye covered and use that as a reference for the second eye after removing the set cast. Personally, I'm not that bothered by covering both my eyes, so I decided to cover both with the cast on. Take another 2-inch strip, fold it in half and place it over the second eye. Smoothing it down as best you can and using your feeling fingers, feel around, feel all the feels. Feel around and just press it into the crevice and use the sensation that you can feel through the soft plaster against your skin to ensure that all the crevices filled in. Once you're satisfied with the first piece, just work in the additional strips, adding layers until you're comfortable with thickness and comfortable with the idea that it will stay in place and will hold its shape. I kept the plaster strips in the bowl of water in the same place they'd been for the entire rest of the cast, so I just had to remember where I'd left things and reach out, and it was mostly by feel, but it wasn't that hard to figure out once you got used to the idea. Once I was happy with how things felt, I waited for the cast to set. This was about 2 songs worth, and I couldn't see any clock, so this is how I measured time. And when all the last areas to go down felt solid, it was time to take it off.
Yeah, so my camera actually stopped recording just before I was able to show you how to get the face cast off, but it's really simple and really easy. You literally just have to make some stupid faces. You scrunch up your face, just twist around, make the oddest face that you possibly can think of, because no one's going to see it, it's under the cast, and it will help release it from your face. So have a bit of fun with that, no one's going to see. And you just wiggle around and just slowly and gently pull off the cast. It should slide off quite easily, especially if you put the Vaseline layer down like I didn't. And if it does get stuck, if there's a little bit that you missed with the Vaseline, it's really simple and easy. Just work your fingers up gently and just pull on the skin lightly, and that will release it from the plaster. It shouldn't stick too badly, so if you did miss a spot, don't freak out, it will come off, it will be fine. Once you've got the cast off, you want to hold it up to a light source and then look into it, and that way you can see from the light shining through whether or not there are any thin patches across the cast that you need to reinforce, because you don't want to have any weak spots. when you're pouring in the whatever you're using to mould the cast. And as well, once you've done that, you then want to plug in the eyes if you left them open, and plug up the nose, because obviously you needed to have that open to breathe. What you don't want to do is start pouring in your casting material and have it come pouring out the nose, because that's going to be messy and rather unsightly. And when you'll come to patching, what you want to do is do as much as you possibly can in terms of patching on the outside of the cast, because anything you do on the inside is then going to change the shape of the face, your face, that you've just spent all this time making a cast of, basically defeating all the hard work you've just done. So if you do need to put anything on the inside, minimal. Just try and do as little as you can to the inside so you don't change the face shape that you've worked so hard to get. Any reinforcement, any plugging, try and put on the outside. You can go as heavy as you want on the outside, because obviously that's not going to change the shape on the inside. What I did is I left mine to dry overnight, and that was just so that I was completely and 100% sure that it was entirely dry and fully set, and it wasn't going to cause any problems when I came to mould. And once you have left it overnight, if you do, you are most definitely ready to mould. So I'm going to be making a separate video on me moulding this, and I will have that up soon. So thank you for watching, I hope you found this useful, and I will put a link to the next video somewhere around here, so keep your eyes peeled. Thank you for watching.